This is Unit 2, Environment and Culture. Let's take a look at what you should have hopefully finished already on Classcraft, or where you should be now. So you should have already been reviewing the key vocabulary, the 5 words that we had, using either Quizlet or flashcards or your notebook. Make sure that you are able to use those words in your answers and practice using them when you respond. With your team, you should have brainstormed a variety of natural environments on the A3 poster paper in the back. One thing to keep in mind is that you want to brainstorm and write a variety of types of natural environments instead of things that you find inside a natural environment. So, for example, rocks and water and plants are examples of things that you find in a natural environment, but they are not natural environments themselves. After you made your list of natural environments, you should have considered which ones we live in and which ones we don't, and then discussed and made some notes with your team about why the natural environments we do not live in are either important or why they're not important. So here's the vocabulary so far, the first set. You may have added more words since then, like systems and maybe any other words that have come up. So let's talk about systems. Last unit, our key concept was time, place, and space. And we looked at how maps can be a representation of time and place and space, and how they exist as concepts that are used all over the world with a variety of people. Right? So to review, a key concept is an important or big idea. It helps us to have a good understanding of something that's important to many people in the world. It's always existed in the past, the present, and the future. So it's something that is true and real. Again, it's important to everybody. So in this unit, like you've maybe seen already, we're going to be talking about the concept of systems. So on Classcraft, in The Fastest Way Down, you should have visited the Simple English Wikipedia and searched for the word system. You should have read the entire web page for system and taken notes on anything that you found important. So it could be a definition, examples, other new vocabulary that you don't know. And so here's the web page. Hopefully you've written down a list of a couple different examples at least. So let's look at 2 examples of systems first, and then we'll do a little activity together to show you how to do the next thing on Classcraft. So the human nervous system is an example of a system within our bodies, right? Because if we, like the Simple English Wikipedia page says, if we understand a system as individual things working together to make one new thing work, we could look at the system, the veins and arteries and all these parts of our bodies as the individual parts of the system that work together to make up our human nervous system, right? So it's a bunch of individual things working together. Similarly, with your bike, right? A bicycle is a system. So you have the wheels, the handlebars, the pedals and chains and sprockets and everything that work together to make your bike run like a bike. All right, so looking at this, you can pause it if you want. Think of a few ways how can a forest be a system? What are 6 different parts of a forest that would work together to make it a system? So we got trees, insects, water source, bees, soil, deer, right? All these things exist in the forest, and that's what make it a natural ecosystem with the interaction of all of these things. Right, as we talk about systems and things that influence systems and how systems influence different things, we're going to be using these 2 words. So these are 2 words that you should also add to your flashcards or your Quizlet, and that's internal and external factors. Internal factors are things that exist that are inside the system that have an influence on it. And external factors are things that are outside the system that have an influence on it. Right, so looking at our forest example again, we can see that these are all inside the system, so they would all be internal factors. Right, the water influences the system in that it gives the trees and bee insects and everything else water and nourishment it needs to live. Right, soil also gives nutrients and things for the plants and trees to grow, so those are internal factors. So one thing you can start to think about is what sort of external factors would have an effect on different systems. On the forest, for example, humans is a very obvious one. So by cutting down trees, we're an external factor that's influencing the forest. And that's one way we can negatively influence it. We can also have a positive impact. We can control the amount of water. We can control the amount of trees. If there's, we could introduce more bees, for example, into the system if it needs it. So those are all positive impacts we could have on the forest. So the next task is look back at your graffiti boards that you've created with your team and decide, are they natural environment systems? Why or why not? And then choose one of those systems, turn the paper over, right, or make a new one if you want to do it individually. Write the name of the environment in the center, and a mind map to show all the different parts, just like with our forest example. And then brainstorm some ways that humans, as an external factor, might affect the different parts of your system, right? And don't use a forest because that was our example. And then write them in the discussion board on Classcraft activity. That will be it for systems. Next up, we'll be looking at the difference between climate and weather.